We are now at 12:01. I would like us to start
Yes,
because
please.
all of us who are here still need to know all the good stuff you're going to share with us, Fran.
Mhm.
So welcome to everyone on behalf of the Black Business and Professional Association in their Ask a Professional series. And this is going to be taped so other people who didn't get a chance to come on um, at this time can get a chance to see. The BBPA has decided to do this during this time to give our professionals and business people other opportunities to hear from our professionals in our community. And Fran DELSOL, let me just take a minute to tell you about her. I've known Fran for a long time and I never knew half these things. So she is a retired associate director of strategic sourcing, worked for Bell for 35 years. She now serves as the Trade and Investment Commissioner for Dominica. I'm not going to go through all her things, but put it this way, she's very well versed in disaster preparedness. And one stood out at me, Fran, and it has nothing to do with this, but I need to know. It says, you're the Ontario Community Influencer with the Canadian Armed Forces. What is a community influencer? Before we go into procurement.
Well, my role is to encourage, because I'm a friend of the Canadian Forces, so to speak, to encourage persons to consider the military as a career opportunity. So I go out and I speak and I invite young persons, anybody who is under 50 years old, to be honest with you, to introduce them to the military. The military is not just soldiers at war. It's like a country in itself. It has roles and it has all the roles that any government would have, any country would have. So I encourage people, even if you're a musician, even if you're a cook, even if you're a warehouse manager, any skill that you have can be applied in the military, and it's a good job to have and great benefits, and they
Okay,
take care of the people.
I see another session about that coming up because who knew? So today, Fran is going to talk to us about procurement and all of that good stuff. So over to you, Fran.
Thank you very much. So I prepared a short presentation because I want to cover today just the basics so to leave everybody with a basic understanding of the process of procurement, the process of buying, how does a supplier engage with a seller, how does a seller and a buyer engage, and so we will start.
Wow.
I like that, Ross. Everybody wants to eat, but few are willing to hunt. I agree with that.
That's a very good, very good.
Hold on. Hold on 1 second. It looks like we have some technical difficulties. 1 second.
No problem. So Fran, perhaps you could just explain what the word procurement means. I'm sure most people know it, but exactly what you mean when you say
the process of buying. Procurement is the process of buying either a product or a service. So, you know, we say procurement professionals, we say buyers, we say purchasing agents, we say purchasing directors, but it's really just the same thing. A buyer would be an entry-level position. You're a buyer, and then you would move up to throughout the different progression in the procurement business. So I ended up as an associate director of strategic sourcing, and that is at the high end of the buying profession, of the buying career. So if you bought pens and pencils and things that was simple, then you would be considered a buyer. As you moved up to more strategic purchases, then you would be considered a purchasing agent, a director of strategic sourcing, and so to speak.
Okay, so.
Thank you. So what does consider me the customer, I'm the buyer. And for purposes of just this discussion, I will refer to buyer, but I've already told you what, you know, there is different names that a buyer can go by. And what do you as a seller need to provide me with? There's 7 basic principles of purchasing. I want the right quality. I want it to be suitable for my intended purpose. I want the right quantity. I want to ensure that my business keeps flowing. I want the right price. I want you to give me the best bang for my buck. I want it at the right time. Timing is essential to my service. We'll talk later about terms like vendor managed inventory, consignment, and just in time. I want it in the right place. Can you get it to me? Can you meet my need? Can you deliver to me with ease? I want it at the right terms. Can you pay me when I want to? Can you accept when I want to pay you at 90 days, at 60 days, at 120 days? Can you accept that I don't want to pay any late fees if I pay you late? Can you accept those terms? And are you the right source? Are you the right supplier who is reliable? Your location is acceptable for my business. Are you responsible? Are you an ethical supplier? You have social responsibility as a supplier? And that includes diversity. So are you the right source? Are you that person that I need to do business with? Keep in mind those 7 principles as we discuss for the next few minutes. Next slide, please. As a buyer, as a purchaser, I have a number of objectives, a number of basic needs. I want to reduce my costs. I want to reduce my overall costs. I want to pay less. I want the same quality, but I want to pay less. I want to diversify my supply because I don't want what happened to Canada during the COVID crisis when they ran out of masks and they couldn't find suppliers, that they had to scramble. I want to know that I have suppliers all over the place who can help me in case you can't deliver. I want you to fulfill my business requirements. Go back to the 7 principles. These are my requirements. I want to manage the relationship with you. I want us to be in a good working relationship. I want to spend my money wisely, and I want to spark innovation in my business. I want you to come to tell me what you're doing isn't really the best in class, that we could do better. That's the business relationship. That's sparking innovation, and that's helping me spend my money wisely. So these are my basic needs. You as the supplier need to help me accomplish my basic needs. Next slide, please. How do I go about doing that? First of all, I do an internal needs analysis. That is to say, I identify what my needs are. I collect data. I do something called benchmarking with what my current performance is. What do I need? And what is in the actual market? So that is my internal needs analysis. Then I look at the supplier market and I say to myself, I need to identify all the feasible sources that are out there that can provide my product and my service. Then I collect all that supplier information and I do what I call an evaluation criteria, because it is important for me to select the right supplier. If a supplier is unable to meet my needs, it could prove detrimental to my business. So I may do a supplier visit, I may talk to your customers, I may do all that because I'm collecting information about you to evaluate if you're the best provider for me, for my service or my product. Then I develop what is called a sourcing or an outsourcing strategy. I decide, when I look at what I need, should I buy it? Should I make it? And if I can make it, then that's okay, I'll stay in-house. Or should I go out there and look for a person? Then if I don't know what I need, if I'm not sure what I need, then I would do something called an RFI. I'd go out there and I'd do a request for information. Or if I know what I need, then I would ask for, just give me a quotation, a request for quotation. Or if I've determined after I've collected all this information that this really is not a good fit for my business, I'm in the cleaning business. I don't want to deal with planting trees. So then I say, this is not for me, I'll outsource it. And I would then develop an outsourcing strategy. So I'd look at all the options I have. Do I make it? Do I buy it? Do I get rid of it altogether? And then I implement that strategy at step 5. I send, implementing that strategy, that's where I send you out my specification. I send you out my requirements. I send you out my terms. I send you out everything I need. And then I wait for you to come back with a response. After I've reviewed all the response, and we refer to them as bids, the evaluation begins. And then we decide, do we enter into a contract? Do we continue the negotiations? And as I talk about a contract, and we talk about our small businesses, I have seen contracts that have been detrimental to small businesses. Contracts are usually in favor of the buyer. So it's always good as a small business to have a lawyer look at your contract before you sign it. So again, while we're doing this negotiation, we engage in something called supplier conditioning. So I look at you, I look at your body language. I determine whether you're looking me in the eyes. I determine whether you can sell your business to me. I'm doing a lot of supplier conditioning to see if you're the right supplier to provide me my business. Once that is done, I award a contract, or if I stay with my old supplier, I implement a transition plan, and I implement some supply chain improvements in the business. But I may decide after I've gone to market and selected a bid, I may not change suppliers. I may stay with the old supplier. I may award a new supplier, or I may just decide, you know what, all I need to do is enhance my internal processes and not do anything, because going out to market does not mean that I have to award you the business. And I have one caveat here, that is for private companies, not for the government. Once you go out to market to the government, you've got to give them you've got to award a contract. Next slide, please. So as the supplier now, that is you must fulfill certain basic conditions. You must be professional in your approach. You must be ethical, and you must have uncompromising integrity. And you must assume the same of me, the buyer. In my early years at Bell, I had suppliers come to me and make me offers that scared me, because I didn't really believe people did that, but I experienced it. And I know that people will come to you and make you offers for contracts, even if they think they don't deserve it, if they think that you lack integrity and that they can probably get their way to buy into the business. You as a supplier must be fully equipped to supply me my product or my service. And you could engage what we call subcontractors, third-party partners, but it must be transparent to me. I do not want to be involved in your back business, but you must provide me a product or a service as per my contract, and who you deal with behind the scenes is really up to you. You must see this as a continuing relationship, and you have to assist me, the buyer, me, the customer, in looking after the interests of my company. So if I want to reduce costs, if I want to if I want to change the quality of the product, if I want to use an alternate source, if I want to do some market research, anything I want to do, I expect you to work with me in this relationship and help us build this relationship together. You must be seen as invested in my business. Let's look at Walmart and Costco, for example. If you go to Walmart and you go to Costco, in the main aisles, what you see is these are the people that have great relationships with Walmart and Costco. So what you see when you go to Costco, what's on the top rack? These people do not have the great relationships. If Costco feels that you are vested in their business, you give them reductions, you allow them to sell, they will put your product up front, and that these are the products that will be always on sale. So you must be seen as a supplier to be invested in my business and want me to succeed. And our approach in the long run must be collaborative on anything that is important to me. I know, the saying, the customer is always right. We may not always feel that way if you're a seller or a supplier, but you must be collaborative in matters of importance to me and help me fulfill my objectives that were on the first page, my guidelines, my principles, and so on. Thank you. Next slide, Ross. And what do you need to know in terms of purchasing and procurement or buying? Basic terms, like I talked about before, when we decide what strategy we're going to go out for. If I just want information, I will do what is called an RFI, a request for information. If I know what I want and all I want is your price, I will just ask you for a request for quotation, an RFQ. If I want something more elaborate, I'm not quite sure, I think you can come with different ideas, I would come with a request for proposal. When you awarded a contract, and remember, I go back to, as a small business, always have somebody, different set of eyes, look at your contract to make sure that you can live with this agreement, because at the end of the day, these are legal terms and conditions, and you don't want to be held responsible if the fog gets too thick and you can't deliver. So after I've issued a contract, I send you a purchase order. That's what I want to buy, and that purchase order has the terms and conditions. It's a PO. It's referred to as a PO. While you've got the purchase order, I've decided, oh, I want to make a change to this. I forgot to add something. I'll send you a CO or a change order. while we're waiting to issue the contract, I may issue a letter of intent to you. I may say that this letter will say, I intend to give you this business. It is not legally binding, but you could take it to the bank if you're looking for money to get your business started. A memorandum of understanding is in the same context. I may give you a memorandum of understanding. This is what we as two parties agree to do, but it again is not legally binding. But you could take it to the bank if you needed to get money to start the business and start the process. Terms of payment, like I said, you'll be very hard pressed to get any large organization who will pay you in under 90 days today, but will pay you in 30 days, in 60 days, in 90 days. These are the terms of my payment. I have seen 120-day payment terms. Then there is what we call a specification. This is what I want. I have designed it. I have drawn it up. I have written it up. This is my specification, which I've sent to you to provide me my product or my service. You as a buyer, as a seller, must have knowledge of my business. Don't come into my organization and with the impression that you don't know who I am, because that is not a good incentive for me to do business with you. So you must do your homework as a seller and know the organization that you want to sell to. You should have an annual report, which is just a documentation of your financial activities, your sales, your expenses. You must have quality control reports, document all your quality issues, anything that affects your quality and the product you're offering. Your service level reports, documents it documents aspects of your service. Go back again to slide 1. I spoke about quality, I spoke about availability. Your service level reports must help me understand that you can deliver this product or this service. Lastly, who are your customers? Who are your references? And your customers, remember, I may or may not call. So make sure that you approach them before you put the names down and say, you can call so-and-so, because I've called customers, I've called references who have actually been detrimental to some suppliers. So you need to be very, very cautious that when you provide any prospects with customers or references, that those customers and references will speak to the quality of your service and speak very highly of you, because failing that, you may lose business just on a poor reference. So that's really the concept of procurement, purchasing, of buying, the principles of buying in simple terms for a small business. And I open now to any questions you might have.
I would like to ask a couple. You have given us a very, very thorough presentation. So I have two sides of the questions.
Yeah.
One, how does someone get into this field? What qualities do you, what is the training they need, or how do they get involved if someone is looking to get into this as a career? So I'd like to start there.
Okay. As a purchasing professional, as a buyer, as a procurement professional, you need to be able to communicate effectively. So you need to be able to get your word across. You need to like people, because you need to like being around people. You need to be tolerant of people, even if you feel that they are lying to you. But you also need to be able to not react. What we call in our business flinching. If somebody says to you something that is just so utterly ridiculous, then you don't flinch, because you don't want them to think that whatever they have said has had an impact on you. I spent a large period of my time at Bell Canada going through the universities and the colleges, encouraging persons to become a procurement professional. Because when I started, it was only seen as a job. I was instrumental in getting the degree program at Ryerson, and now most other colleges offer purchasing as a degree or an advanced college course.
Oh,
so
excellent.
Yeah. So you need to be able to. I mean, anybody can be you can be in law, because in purchasing you must understand the concept of contracts and contracting. You could be in engineering, because you have to understand the concept of putting a specification together. You could be in business, because you've got to understand the pros and cons of running a good business, getting your needs and understanding what your business needs are. So you could come out of any discipline and become a procurement professional. And that was what I spent my time doing, because until we started at Bell, maybe 20 years before I left, it was a job. People came in, they worked and they left. But we actually turned it into an opportunity to make this a career, because that's what it did for me. My purchasing was my career. But you have to, one, be able to communicate effectively, and one, like to be around people.
Perfect. So then moving from that, if someone, I listened to you quite clearly when you were saying, as a supplier, you looked at body language and all the different nuances when you are the person looking to purchase. How does diversity and the cultural and racial differences play into this? Because we know that each group perhaps does things differently, and some people don't do eye contact as North Americans like, and all of those issues. What training do the purchasing agents have to deal with all these cultural differences?
So in my case, I purchased, I can tell you the company, I purchased cable, we purchased cable from LG Cable in Korea. And so they came to see me, but before they came in, I called the consulate. I did research on what it is like, how do you meet them? How do you greet them? How do you deal with them? Because I knew as much as they did with us, I know before they left, they looked into how they should behave, so to speak, around us. We also had to do the same thing. And I knew we as a procurement professional, you're not allowed to accept any gift over $10. But yeah, I know that they love to give gifts. And I found out through the consulate that if we returned it, it would be worse than a slap in the face.
Exactly.
So I had to accept the gift, but then I transferred it on to other members in the clerical pool. We did a lot, so put names in, and somebody ended up getting a $2,000 jewelry box, but I could not return it. So you've got to know the customs of the people that you're meeting with. It's totally different. For example, way south of the border, if you deal with Mexico and so, the lifestyle, the attitude is different. But when it borders on anything that is illegal, you have to tell yourself, I no longer want to do business with those individuals.
So also listening to you, the sellers, I listened to all the things that a small business person would need to know to come to get to be with the big boys and girls, big boys and girls, to procure. How do small business, and let's talk about our community, because we know many times lots of opportunities and we're not at the table, many times because of lack of knowledge or knowing how to do it. So how do small businesses get someone like yourself if they are not versed in how to move to that next stage?
I found that to be one of the problems, one of my concerns working at Bell. And I got involved in diversity in the US with the Institute of Supply Management, simply because I wanted to bring our small businesses into give them some purchasing power, give them an opportunity. But I think we need, because we are so small, I think there is extreme difficulty in us penetrating those very large marketplaces. So how do we do this? We need to start by understanding we do not have the size, therefore we must collaborate. We must come together. Ross has a technology company, another friend has a technology company, another friend has a technology company. There's a bid at maybe Rogers Cable for some technology business. Maybe individually they're too small, but collectively they can put a bid in and we can agree that one person will do it, but we will support each other. Because we need, if Ross gets a high profile client and he can advertise it and speak about it, it sends hope in our community. So we're too small. We do not have the financial, we do not have the financial wherewithal sometimes to even prepare the bid. So we need to find a way to raise capital within our businesses and have a friendlier relationship with our banking institutions, with credit unions that are more flexible and friendly. But we need to be able to raise capital so we can be seen as viable competitors in the marketplace. Talent is also an issue. You know, I mean, I speak for myself. I should have done more in going out to our community and letting them know that we have people that can
assist.
Yeah, that can assist, that can be your face, that can be the front. Because we have as a Black business, we may not be able to sell our business. We may have a very good business, but we may not be able to sell our businesses properly. So we need to have that front. We need to have that person who is articulate, who can sell our business and sell our service for us, even if it means we stay in the background, but we need to understand that this individual is really here to assist us. And that requires trust. Why would I come out of the blue and tell you, I want to help you? I want to help you. It requires us to trust each other. It requires us to be more collaborative. And I heard Selwyn speak some time ago about our professionalism, our professional approach. We need to understand that we need to change our approach sometimes in how we approach people, in how we deal with people, and just be more approachable, so to speak. Because, you know, I know we're recording this, but truth be told, there is an inherent pushback amongst our community because we're perceived to be brash, we're perceived to be ABWs, we're perceived to be all kinds of things. And so that is what they see before you even enter the office. That is, they've developed that perception of you. So we have to do whatever is within our power to break that mold. So we're not perceived as people who are brash, who are uncompromising, who are angry people, who are hostile. Instead, we come with the knowledge that you need. We come with an understanding that you are open to receive us regardless of how we look.
I'll come back to that a bit, but one of the things you mentioned, that when you want great quality, but you want to pay less. Do you ever, as a bidder, take a higher cost and not the lower cost, even though you want to pay less? What would make you do that?
With what we call total cost of ownership, value analysis. So I'll just give you, I may go out for bid, and then up front, I may have a bidder that says it'll cost you less. But when I look at the length of the contract, when I look at the potential for that supplier to help me grow my business, I may determine that at the end of the day, over 5 years, it's going to cost me significantly less if I stayed with the supplier who was initially high. I also want to develop a relationship with that supplier. So in our discussions, in our supplier management meetings, I will say, why is it that supplier B can provide this product at so much less than you? Can you start working on how you can do that? And then because we have that relationship, they will go out there and figure out what it is supplier A is doing, why they can deliver. And they might come back and say, supplier A is doing this because they have a less efficient product, they have a cheaper product. And so because we have that communication as supplier and buyer, we work together, and we don't always pick the lowest bid.
Okay. And you mentioned twice, I heard you say that the sellers need to have a lawyer check over their, which of course makes perfect sense. Have you ever had somebody who is fairly unsophisticated and they didn't do that work, but the bid was great? Do you ever say to them, go get that checked, or is that conflict when you are the buyer?
No, it's never a conflict. You want to make sure, because at the end of the day, if I give you the business and you fold, I'm not helping myself and I'm not helping you. So no, we have always encouraged them to, you make sure that your internal legal team or an external lawyer look at the contract, make sure you understand the terms and conditions you are signing to, because at the end of the day, if you fail to deliver, there is a penalty of so much money. You have to give me that money.
Okay.
And I mean, it might cause you to go bankrupt. It might cause so many negatives if you don't manage your contract properly. You can come back and say, I cannot live with this contract. And then it's up to me to go back to the drawing board and say, do I want to stay there or do I want to move to the next best thing? You may come back and say, I cannot do 120 days payment terms. It's just impossible. And then I will say, okay, let's do 90. Maybe 90 was where I wanted to be in the first place. But I've put 120 because I always go for as much as I can get. Right. So you need to know what is reasonable. You also need to know what the marketplace is bearing. Right. And so if I ask you for something that's unreasonable, you need to come back and tell me I can't do it.
So Fran, I'm going to probably put you on the spot here, and Nadine is on the call and she can also jump in. What I am hearing, there is a great need in our community, and we're talking about our community, and we know it's not one, it's many African communities. There's Caribbean, there's African, there's people born here who are Black, but they need help with this part of, because I know when the Pan Am Games were, it was mandated that suppliers be diversified, and yet a vast number of opportunities we missed. What can the BBPA, and I see Donna is on the call as well, so we're putting all the BBPA people, what can we all do to change and assist with this very important need of us to be able to be at the table?
Yeah, I hear you. I still cringe at the thought that we did not get opportunities despite the mandate that the Pan Am Games were to use 25% of the diversified suppliers.
You know how many we actually got, if any?
I would hazard a guess 0. They met their diversity quota. They did. Because remember in Canada, unlike the US, where diversity is mostly Blacks, and now some LGBTQ, in Canada it's
everybody.
It's Blacks, Indians, Chinese, Aboriginals, Asians, LGBTQ, and white women, don't forget. They're part of the diversity team. Right. So there's white men and there's everybody else. So I would love to say, but I don't have 100% certainty that we didn't. The Black community did not benefit from the Pan Am Games. What can we do, to go back to your question? I think it's important to go back to some of the things we talked about. We need to understand our limitations. We need to understand our need for access to capital, collaboration where our businesses are too small. Put people in front that can speak to the powers that be to get us a seat at the table, and go to the officials, government officials, and say, we have not seen, our community have not seen the kind of diversity that we in businesses that we expect. Because I worked for Bell Canada for 35 years, and for years I filled out when they would do their diversity in employees. I stopped doing it when I asked at a meeting with all the vice presidents one day, am I Black or am I a woman? Where do you put me? And they told me I filled both categories, and I thought, this is ridiculous, because I can't fill both categories. I am either one or the other. But I knew that I was helping them meet those numbers, and I didn't want to do that anymore, because I felt it was not a fair approach to monitoring their diversity.
I see Nadine has a question or a comment.
Yeah, in terms of the Pan Am Games, I remember, working with individuals that tried to apply, and just overall in the procurement process, I find it very challenging to navigate all the path. For example, you have Merck's, as part of a platform that I think all government contracts, you have to be a member of Merck's. Mm-hmm. You have to pay to be a member of Merck's. There's also Bid and Go, another platform that we have to be a part of. And just to navigate those processes, I think they're meant as a barrier more than an access to small businesses. And to your point, Sandra, I think next steps is that we have to have a basis. And I know with partners like CAMSI, they will walk you through the procurement process of navigating, the Mercs and all those different things. But Fran, I don't know if you know of any particular organization that the process is simpler. If we want to scale up and Black businesses have the opportunity to do so, there just isn't a clear path to do so.
No, I think it will require us, Nadine, to come to the table, and with CAMSI, but with a focus on Black businesses. Come to the table and figure out how it is we do that. But to go back to the Pan Am Games and Merck's and the other bidding platforms, that's why we needed to come together. So you don't want 16 little Black companies trying to navigate this morass, because that's what it was. You want to come in as one. Everybody operates under one umbrella, and then try to see if we can get to the table. But other than that, individually, we would never succeed.
So
I also, if I,
sorry, who is this?
This is Donna.
Oh,
I think
hi,
also, you know, just picking up on a couple of friends' comments about the experience south of the border. While there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from them, you know, they have, for example, as we all know, sort of minority and women-owned, what they called minority and women-owned organizations that actually lobby large companies and organizations to set aside a portion of their supply management for women and minority-owned businesses. And I think that one of the roles that we can play is helping in that advocacy role, to bring, as friends, as you sort of bring together, act as a collective, and say to, and I mean, I know that some people already do this. I think the city of Toronto does it, for example, some of the, but as opposed to, we absolutely need that whole, how do we navigate the systems that are already in place? But there's a secondary role that we have to play, is how do we get the people who are doing the purchasing to actually have this top of mind, to actually think about it when they are putting out their RFPs, to reach out to a BBPA, to reach out to, you know, one of our organizations to say, hey, we're putting out this RFP, we'd like your businesses to apply. I don't think we have as much, I don't think that the will to do that is as strong north of the border than it is south, because of the legislative differences with the EEOC, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that we do have a role that we can play in helping with that advocacy.
Thank you for that, Donna, because I believe that is to be true. What's your comment, Fran?
No, I was just saying that it's it is not a mandate in the large organizations. It is a recommendation, and what I saw was that it wasn't put into action. So in large corporations, it is recommended that the purchasing managers, you know, encourage purchasing from diverse members of the community. But even then, we are at the bottom of the diverse group in terms of ability. But
there's not the will to actually make it happen on the corporate level.
And sorry, one more thing, Sandra. As long as we continue to not identify the Black community as that group we're talking about, because if we, like I said, in Canada, we've got so many groups that fall within that diverse bucket that we get lost. So we can, if we talk diversity and we start speaking about, then everybody gets to be part of that. And we're too far behind we just have to look after ourselves. And that's what is required, Nadine. If we are to do something, it has to be an approach that, you know, we get to sit with heads of organizations and tell them about their lack of assistance, their lack of support for communities that support them.
Right. But I do, if I may comment, I do believe sometimes we have to be proactive. Because I've seen this in many instances. When I worked at Harborfront, for example, when I went there, it was very much we weren't seen at all, really. And we had to put it on the table. How are we actually going to do it? We had to do the work, go out, find the people, put them in front of the people who are programming, for example, and say, hey, we are here. And they said, oh, we didn't know how to find you. So we had to sometimes we have to do some of that work. And I am putting forth that with all the other things that the BBPA has on its plate. And Nadine just looked up as if to say, Sandra, don't add one more. But it may be something that, Fran, you know, could put together a meeting of procurement officials and be invited by the BBPA. They are invited and you speak to it, and other potential people who could make use of that, be invited to that meeting. It doesn't have to be 50 people, but one person can make a difference. Because as you say, Fran, we have a moral and civic responsibility to leave the world better than we found it. I love that quote. And I think that's true. So I really believe that sometimes you're perfectly poised to take on another major role in your career.
I know this Nadine is laughing now. A while ago she was tense, but now that Sandra that Sandra's throwing the ball in my court, Nadine is smiling. That's not right.
Is there anybody else on the call that has a question? Alicia, any questions? Alicia? I can't.
I also do have another comment. If you could put together a list of 5 top things, Fran, that a small entrepreneur has in order to get to some procurement opportunities. And I know that the federal government, the first tier is 25,000, but even to get that 25,000, you know, so much has to happen, but at least it's a step. And it's attainable for, I think, for any business. That first 25,000 is attainable. What should be in our toolkit?
Good question, Nadine.
Yeah. And it doesn't. You know what? Toolkit doesn't have to be a physical. It can be something like our mindset. It's removing the fear of failure from your operating zone. It's saying that it's going into that zone thinking I can do it. And that also comes with the attitude I spoke about. It's having references, and references may not necessarily mean people that you have done business with, but rather people that know your capability, your quality, people that can speak to you, and these references can be from outside of our community. So, you know, if we can do something and have the mayor of Toronto vouch for us, that would be something good to have in your toolkit. And again, it's having people, have somebody who can present, who is, like I said previously, who is articulate and knows the business that you are vying for. That you don't go into the meeting and you're stumbling or searching for words and trying to figure out what it is I want to say. But somebody who's comfortable sitting amongst leaders and CEOs and presidents, that they are not intimidated by position and power. So it's really knowing your business. So what, you know, we as a Black community tend to be all over the place. What is your focus? What is your business? What it is that you're offering? What is it that you want support for? And how can that business help move the yardstick? So those are some of the thoughts that come to mind. You know.
Gavin had a question. Gavin, you had a question?
No, I didn't have. I was just agreeing with what
it said I have a question from BBPA, sorry.
That was me.
That was you. My apologies.
That's okay.
Okay. Is there anybody else?
I do have one more question.
No problem.
Because I hear this from everybody. Can you tell us a little bit about unsolicited proposals? You know, how do they work? Are they, what is the chances of success when you send an unsolicited proposal?
She smiles.
I would say it doesn't work 90% of the time. I would recommend you find out who and you know, some purchasing people may actually tell you sending an unsolicited bid. They may actually encourage you to do that. But from my experience, it has not worked 90% of the time. Most times it doesn't even get reviewed. So I would say your best bet is to find out who the purchasing manager is. And short of being a nuisance to the general public, contact them, call them. I would like to meet with you. I just need 5 minutes of your time. I would like to share my proposal with you. And at that time, if you've had a meeting, then you can write and say, sir, madam, based on our previous conversations, I'd like to present you with the opportunity. At that time, it becomes more than an unsolicited bid. You're not just called off the streets. You're saying now that we've had this relationship, you and I have spoken, but expect the purchasing person to push back and not take your calls and have you, go around the table. But so it's harder today to get in. It's much harder today to get in than when I started 35 years ago. But you have to be persistent and you have to be professional in your approach. Not be, not call and be annoying, but you've got to ask. Because if you don't ask, you will never get a seat at the table. You've got to ask.
Can I ask, Fran, is the City of Toronto and the federal government, isn't there a mandate that they must look for diverse quotes? Isn't there a mandate?
I don't know, because my purchasing life is in private, not public. But that may be the case. But again, Sandra, diverse in Canada
I understand.
Has a different meaning. So maybe they are meeting the diverse quotas because I can tell you the Asian and the Chinese communities, they are getting business. They are getting business. So they are meeting their diversity numbers. They're meeting their quotas. It's just that the Black community is being left behind.
Okay. Wow. Well, lots to think about. Any last words or anything else that you want to leave us with? And are you accepting the challenge that I'm throwing out to you to organize a meeting of purchasing people on behalf of the BBPA to get that ball rolling? Because I have always truly felt it takes one person just has to get buy-in from many people, and you can move mountains. And you have said that. You have a moral and civic responsibility to leave the world better than we found it. That's what you said.
I said I was doing that in all the other things.
Can I just before Fran answers, I think that that's an awesome idea, and I think that would be fabulous. But before we have that meeting, don't we have to know what the community has to offer?
Of course.
And part, I think, of our challenge, of anybody's challenge, is the funding, the resources to do the kind of outreach and marketing and surveying that needs to be done in order to accurately gauge what the capacity is in the Black community. And so, I mean, it's great to have the meeting, but you have the meeting, you get people committed, but then what do you offer them?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Donna. Two streams. We need to know that, and we need to know what they're looking for specifically. So whichever way you're going to do it, I put it out. Donna, you could do the community piece. Don't laugh. I'm not joking. I know it's serious. It's very important, but sometimes we have to begin. We just have to begin. And maybe find 2 or 3 businesses, like you were talking about, Selwyn. We have a lot of people in the restaurant and food area. Maybe start with them. Do a thing up with those folks and get their buy-in, and then find purchasing people who deal with that area, and just do that one to start, because the need is great. The need is great. And I do know that when we're not at the table, we get forgotten. I'll share that I sat on the board of the Metro Convention Center. And when they were building the South Side, it was a huge, massive contract. And a small part of it was to do with how the design and decor of the space. And they brought in a professional who brought in a list of all kinds of artists who could do that. And we were not on the list. But because I was at the table, I said, no, this list has no minorities. And they said, are you going to hold up this whole project? And I said, yes. And they were like, oh my God. And they knew I was serious. And we got a lot of other people's names on the list. And in the end, a native Aboriginal artist was chosen. So we just have to be at those meetings and at those tables to bring that forward. And I urge you guys, start with the restaurants and just do that small meeting. Sometimes we want to do it too big. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. One more thing to add to the great work that BBPA is doing. And I want to thank everybody on the call and to let you know, Gavin, can you put up who will be on next on Thursday? Do you have the list of who will be on next? Is he on, Gavin? He's not
Can you give me one moment, please?
Okay. To say to you that the Ask a Professional series will continue this Thursday with Aldine Simmons-Thorpe. She's a transformation business coach, and she'll be on at 12 noon. So we ask you all again to come on and be part of Ask a Professional. Fran, any last words?
Well, thank you, everyone. I hope there, you know, you got some grain of what I was saying, and it's helped you tomorrow. I think it's sad that in 2020, we're still talking about getting a seat at the table, but that is our reality. That is the reality. So I'm with you, Sandra, that we need to be more vocal. We need to be less afraid and get that fear of failure out of our operating zone, and let's just do, you know, pull a couple Rosa Parks on this and do what we need to do.
Thank you. Viola Desmond.
Viola Desmond.
Pull up Viola Desmond.
Yes. I agree.
Thank you all. So on Thursday, May 7th at 12, ask Aldine the pros and cons of starting a business during COVID-19. I look forward to seeing you all on Thursday. Thanks for being here.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.